Algonquin College is fully committed to the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act. As a demonstration of this support, the college has established the Algonquin College Accessibility Office. The role of this office is to ensure that the college is in full compliance with the Act, as well as to continue its leadership role in the area of accessibility. Building on its well-established support of students with disabilities, the Algonquin College Accessibility Office works to ensure that the college is fully accessible to its students, employees, and the general public. This video highlights the efforts the Human Resources has undertaken to ensure the college is accessible to our students, our staff, and our guests.
The intent of the Ontarian government is to continue to ensure and improve opportunities for people with disabilities. In addition, the Accessibility Office in the Human Resource Department at Algonquin College continues to promote a fully accessible institution for its students, employees, and the general public.
Algonquin has a long-standing history of providing exceptional services to students with disabilities and to its employees, and a very well physically accessible environment. What we're doing now by the creation of the Accessibility Office is to challenge the college to think broader in terms of accessibility, to go beyond physical accessibility, but looking at accessibility to information, employment, as well as student and employee supports.
The accessibility standards of the AODA are incorporated into the policies of Algonquin College to ensure equality of opportunity for people with disabilities.
There's policies and procedures that are set up by the Board of Governors and that are approved by the Board of Governors, set up by the President's Executive Committee, which oversees everybody in the college, that they are all treated properly.
As Ontarians with disabilities continue to experience barriers within society, the Ontario government enacted the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act to promote equality.
I think that the legislation is really an opportunity to focus on improving accessibility. It's a bit of a game changer. In the past, individuals, be they students or employees with disabilities, really had to make the request themselves for any kind of accommodations and supports that they need. But now, with the legislation, it is changing our business practices. It is placing the onus of accommodation on the employer, so that we're building accessibility practices into our recruitment processes, how we advertise positions, and how we support individuals with disabilities. So it is a shift, a paradigm shift, if you will, in the way that we think about accessibility. So again, it's going from not requiring the individual to have to request support, but that those supports are just built into the way we do our business.
As leaders in accessibility and in ongoing collaboration with the Ontario government, Algonquin College continues to provide a barrier-free environment.
Well, I think Algonquin College has been a leader in accessibility. In fact, we've worked very closely with the government. Karen Coffey, who's our coordinator of AODA, even was sent on sabbatical and did a 6-month work with the government to set certain standards. And I think we're leaders then, and we're going to continue to be leaders.
In addition, audits are completed annually to re-examine the accessibility of infrastructure.
Well, on an ongoing basis, we do audits to make sure that places are accessible. We also have on our website a place where anybody that has a problem with accessibility can write to without giving their name. We receive it as soon as we receive any kind of complaint. It used to come through my office. Now they just made a new office called the coordinator of AODA, which is a provincial standard, and it goes to that person. It gets fixed right away.
The first standard of the AODA was the customer service standard.
When the legislation first came out, the first standard that the college was obligated to comply with was the customer service standards, and that's all around how we provide customer service to individuals with disabilities. So when you think about that in terms of an academic setting, what does that mean? What is customer service to students? I think that is the way in which we support students through the Center for Students with Disabilities. But then we started thinking, well, customer service is more than, accessible customer service is more than just student support, it's employee support. And so the college, recognizing its obligation, created this position to ensure that there was somebody who was looking at this 100% of their time.
Algonquin College is now in full compliance of this regulation and has begun to turn its focus to its remaining integrated standards.
Well, the CSD, the Center for Students with Disabilities, started in the late 80s. When it first started, it was really a one-woman office, and it was there to support just a handful of students with disabilities. I recall working on contract in that department in 1989, and we had about 50 students that had registered and maybe 2 or 3 counselors. Today, in the Center for Students with Disabilities, they're serving over 1,600 students.
In order to accommodate students with disabilities, the Center for Students with Disabilities was created in the late 1980s.
I was here when they created CSD. At that time I was a teacher, and honestly I worked very closely with them because basically I was the first teacher that came in that ever had a wheelchair. In fact, I don't know of any teachers that are teaching in wheelchairs still. And as much as it was hard for students that have a disability to come into the class, my real challenge was I had a class of 60 students, let's say, and it was to get those students wanting to come and see me. They didn't feel comfortable. And so they were talking about developing this office, CSD office. Louise Legault, I think, was the first manager, and I worked very closely with them.
The CSD's main focus is to ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to educational opportunities at Algonquin College. With the creation of the CSD, an assistive technologist position was created to work with students with disabilities. Having first-hand experience and knowledge of the equipment, Jason Timms was hired as Algonquin College's first assistive technologist.
So I'm an assistive technologist here in the Center for Students with Disabilities. The basic role here for that is to work with students who have a disability, and what I like to look at is what their functional limitation is. So what's the problem they're having in the course that they're having. So you could have a disability, but maybe it doesn't impact you when you have certain jobs to do. I want to look at when it does have an impact, sit down with you and do something called an assistive technology needs assessment, where we look at what are the kind of tools that can help, work with the student to identify them, try them, and then make some recommendations back to their counselor or other support people they work with for any possible funding and that sort of thing to get these tools, definitely to try them out and then see if they're working. And if they're not, we start the process all over again.
I started at the college in 2002 as a learning strategist, and now I am a disability counselor. I work with students who have disabilities and provide academic accommodation.
Advances in assistive technology have allowed students with disabilities to overcome previous barriers to education.
I'm using here right now something called Zoom Text, which is a screen magnifier. You can see the icons in text are definitely a lot larger. I'm just going to reach over here and zoom in and out. This gives me the ability to magnify things or change contrast or just make it a lot easier for me to see. The other thing that I'm working with is this is a 27-inch screen, so I find the bigger the screen is, the less software magnification I need, the more I can see things the way they were meant to be, which can be important. I'm also using something, I don't know if you can get that, and that's an articulated monitor support arm. For someone who has vision issues, one of the things I recommend, the easiest way to make something bigger is to move it closer. So that's not really a high technology kind of thing, but it's definitely some technology. That's something that I use all the time.
I use Dragon naturally speaking, which is a voice to text software.
Despite the financial challenges of meeting the accessibility standards, Algonquin College continues to meet and surpass its obligations under the legislation. Algonquin continues to stay ahead of the curve.
Algonquin has certainly made a huge commitment by the creation of the Accessibility Office, given that there is no specific funding attached to that. All the colleges in Ontario are having to get a handle on how we're going to address this, because there will be some cost implications to incorporating these standards. So part of the reason I think that the provincial government is phasing these standards in over the next 20 years or so is so that organizations can begin to plan financially as how they're going to implement these standards.
What are the goals of Algonquin College?
My goal is so that accessibility is just part of the way we do business. There's not a need for an accessibility office. It's built into our business practices, and it's how we do our day-to-day businesses.
I really would like to see what they call a universal design build. So, and we are doing this in the college quite frequently now. All our new buildings we look at it. I sit on every one of the building committees to make sure that we have a universal design in there. It meets not only the standards, it exceeds the standards. Often you can meet a standard, but it doesn't make me feel comfortable. And if it just takes a little more space, why not give the space now and make the person comfortable? We've done that very, very well in the college. I mean, there's not a building that's not accessible. There's nowhere in the college today you can tell me you cannot get without a wheelchair.
While I'm working here, I really want to work with people who have a disability to show them they can be successful, and I want to help them find the tools that they need to do that. So whether working with someone to help them find the right technology, sometimes a little bit of advice with my experience, which isn't really part of the role, that's what I want to be doing. If it's with the Center for Students with Disabilities, that's great. That could change over time. I'm really interested long-term in working in distance education and accessibility around that. So that's working with using all these modern tools that we're using, anything that hasn't been created, to come up with ways to make that usable by everyone.
I think the biggest thing is having flexibility within my office, to the staff and my manager have always been very supportive, and my role has changed throughout the years, adding things that I can do really well, but taking away things that are more difficult. And it's been really rewarding to do the work that I do, but I don't want to stop doing it. So we make changes so I can still work. But I really hope that makes me feel like I am contributing.